Hey guys, welcome to a new video, and in this particular one we'll be looking at different chain specific hooks. So exactly how we can use these hooks to customize our user's experience on our app. So in a lot of cases you may have a certain smart contract deployed on a specific chain, and you may want your users to be able to interact with those smart contracts. So let's say you may have deployed a smart contract for staking on a particular chain, let's say Ethereum testnet, and you may want your users to be able to stake their tokens on the Ethereum testnet, or you may also want them to be able to unstake their tokens, and you may want all of these actions to strictly go through your decentralized application. And in that case, these transactions of staking and unstaking will need to happen on the dApp itself. So in order to make sure that the user is on the correct chain before you try and execute the transaction, you may want to programmatically switch the user's chain, or make sure that the user is connected to the right chain before they enter a particular page, etc. So in those cases, these hooks become extremely useful, and you may want to integrate them into your application. Now, without wasting much time, let's get started. I hope that you guys will find this video useful. If you do, please like and subscribe, and let's get started. So I'm going to go into the terminal in order to switch the directory to my app. So let's go and do cd space my app, hit enter. Cool. Now we are inside the project. Let's start the server by using npm start. Great. Cool, so the server has started. You can see there's a connect wallet button here, which we don't really need, but okay, we can always remove it later on. And on the other tab, I have opened up the list of Thirdweb hooks. So you can find them at this particular URL. You can remove others, and yeah, this is the URL where you can find all the v4 Thirdweb hooks. And to look at all the network connection hooks that are available to us, you can always go to this section where you'll find the network connection section, and just click on that and it will expand a bunch of different hooks for you. So the very first one says useChain. Now useChain is the most simple of all these hooks, and all it does is that it gives you the current chain that the user is currently on, and it can give you the chain ID, name of the chain, etc., information like that about the current chain. So there's obviously a caveat with this hook, and it says here that it gives you the chain object of the network that the user is connected to, but only if it's a supported network added in the Thirdweb provider's supported chains or one of default chains. So if you go back to our project and we go to index.js, where we have our Thirdweb provider, you can see that we have not specified any chain. We just have an active chain, but that does not mean it's the list of chain that is supported by our application. What Thirdweb does is that it basically supports a list of chains by default, so you don't need to manually add them. You can always have a look at the list of chains that are available by default. Okay, so what you need to do here is that you need to import the default list of chains. So I just want to show you guys exactly what kind of chains are available by default in Thirdweb without adding any extra chains. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's do import open and close braces. Let's do default chains in camel case from Thirdweb chains. So this is the library that contains all the chains. It's called Thirdweb dev/chains, and we can go ahead and do console.log default chains, and this will give us the list of default chains. Let's go ahead and inspect, and as you can see, we have an array of 17 elements. So these are the list of chains in case you want to see them on your console. However, I recommend that you just go to connect wallet button, you connect to a random wallet, and you'll be able to look at all the default supported chains in this menu. So these are the chains that are supported by default, but obviously in the case that you want to add a new chain, then you'll have to manually import it and add it to your supported wallet prop inside of the Thirdweb provider, and I'll show you how. So let's write supported chains equals dot default chains, because this means we also want to include the default supported chains in our application other than what we are adding exclusively. And let's say we also want to add a new chain. Let's say we want to add avalanche Fuji. So let's add avalanche Fuji, and boom, we'll get avalanche Fuji inside of our wallet. And you can also search for the chain. Boom, we have avalanche Fuji. We can also switch to the chain, switch network, boom. So we are now connected to avalanche Fuji. So let's go ahead, since you know how to add additional chains, we can get started with the useChain hook. So let's go ahead and import the useChain hook inside of our index.js file, inside our sample component. And I'm going to initialize a variable or const named chain, and I'm going to do chain equals useChain, open and close parentheses. And what it does is that it gives you the current chain that the user is currently connected to. And obviously, if you want to view information about the chain, the user will have to be connected to a wallet first. So if the user is not connected to any wallet, then the chain constant here will just be undefined. So you have to keep that in mind. And let's go ahead and console.log the chain constant to see what kind of information it has for us. It has given me an error for some reasons. Let's go back to index.js. Yeah, we probably don't need this. Okay, boom. So we are on the website here. Let's go ahead and use the console. Let me refresh the page once again. Boom. So you can see this is the chain object that gets console.logged, and it has information like the name of the chain, which is AVAX. It has the chain ID 43113 in this case. It has the blockchain explorers, basically a blockchain explorer as we saw what Etherscan was. It's similar to Etherscan. And usually happens is that most of these networks have their own blockchain explorers, and not all the networks are on Etherscan. So you can look at the blockchain explorer URL, where you can monitor the transactions or contract interactions that are happening on the blockchain. In this particular network, you have a faucet that allows you to gain testnet funds, and you have the icon URL and a bunch of extra information. You have the full name, Avalanche Fuji testnet, the native currency, stuff like that, the RPC URL as well. So we have all this information. There's also an object that is named as testnet. So we are on testnet, that's why it's true. And obviously if you're on mainnet, then it will be false. Okay, so that's pretty much it for useChain. And as I said earlier, if we disconnect the wallet, then the useChain object returns undefined. So let's clear the log and disconnect our wallet. Boom, you see a bunch of undefined printed here, and that's because our application cannot detect any chain because user is not connected to your website using his wallet. Now that we know what useChain is, let's go back to the list of hooks and move on to the next hook. So the next hook is useChainId. Now this is a very specific hook, and it only gives us a single information, which is the useChainId. You can also get the chain ID using the useChain object, as we saw earlier, that in the console. So you don't need to use this hook if you are already using a useChain hook, because you can just do a useChain hook, and whatever value that returns, you do a .id, then it will give you the chain ID of the chain. But you can, if you just want the chain ID, you can use the useChainId hook. This is very simple. Again, you just go back to our application and import the useChainId hook, and this is a number, so we can also, sorry, we are on the wrong application here. So you need to go back to your sample component, and let's rename this the import as useChainId, and let's do the same over here. Instead of useChain, we are doing useChainId, and let's console.log to our app. Let's go back to our application and refresh the page. Again, you'll notice it's console.logging undefined, and that's because we are not connected to the website with our wallet. Let's do that, and boom, we have the chain ID printed on the console, and it's 43113 for Avalanche Fuji testnet. Let's move ahead to the next chain hook. It's called useNetworkMismatch. Now let's see what this says. Hook for checking whether the connected wallet is currently on the current chain, i.e. the chain specified in the active chain on the Thirdweb provider. So we have covered it before in our previous videos. I don't remember which one, but it was maybe like 2 videos or 3 videos back. But what you need to do in order to see what it does is that go back to your parent component that contains the Thirdweb provider, and what you need to do here is specify an active chain. So active chain is basically a chain that's the main chain. You can call it the main chain of your application, where most of your smart contracts are deployed and transactions are taking place. And once you specify this chain, you can use the useNetworkMismatch hook to automatically detect when the user is not on that main chain that you have specified in the Thirdweb provider. So let's go ahead and specify an active chain. I mean, you can pick any chain you want. Let's just go for Avalanche Fuji. Cool. So it auto completed for me, which is very cool. And also, let's go ahead and change the import. We want to use useNetworkMismatch hook const, let's do const network equals useNetworkMismatch. And if you hover over it, you can see what's going on. What it does, this hook basically returns a Boolean value, so it's a true or false return. It's returning true or false. And if there is a network mismatch, then it returns true. But on the other hand, if the chain matches, the user's chain matches the chain that you have specified right over here as the active chain, then this network will return false. And based on the return value, you can do a bunch of different actions. So first off, let's actually, in fact, let me just print it out. Let's say there is a network mismatch, and let's log in network. Let's save the file and go back. Remember, on our Thirdweb provider, we have specified the active chain as Avalanche Fuji. So let's go back to our application, and as you may remember, our current chain over here is Avalanche Fuji testnet. Let's switch to a different chain that's not equal to our active chain. Cool. There is a network mismatch. It's not printing anything, which is weird. That's probably because again, it's a problem with JSX. It does not accept Boolean values, so you need to turn it into something like maybe a string literal, and then you do something like this to return true or false value. So this way you are manipulating a Boolean value into a string, and boom, you can see now that there is a network mismatch equals true, because currently we are connected to Ethereum or Sepolia network, while on the other hand that network that we have specified in the active chain is Avalanche Fuji. So let's go ahead and switch back to Avalanche Fuji to see what happens next. Boom, it returns false. So you can use this value that you're getting using the useNetworkMismatch hook to perform a bunch of actions. And which brings me to the next hook that we are covering, which is useSwitchChain. Now, useSwitchChain is extremely useful when you're trying to programmatically switch the user's chain, because a lot of times you don't want to tell the user to switch the chain. You want to do it for them, so it automatically prompts the user with a message to switch their chain, and they may click on confirm, and then they will be connected to a different chain that you have specified. So let's click on this, and it's a very simple explanation. It's used for switching to a different network or a chain. So let's go ahead and actually implement this. Use switch chain. So what this hook does is that it returns a function instead of returning a value like we have seen so far. So it's like a function that you need to call, and if you hover over it, you can see that you need to pass in the chain ID of the chain that you want your users to switch to. So let's, for the sake of this example, let's get the user to switch to let's say Avalanche testnet. So let's also import Avalanche chain from the Thirdweb dev chains library. Let's do import, open and close braces, Avalanche Fuji. I think it's called Avalanche Fuji from Thirdweb dev. Instead of React, we'll do chains. And let's include a button here inside of a div that says click me to switch to Avalanche Fuji. And let's go ahead and add an on-click listener, and all it's going to do is it's going to call the switch chain function. So actually let's make it like that: switch chain Avalanche Fuji dot chain ID. I have a feeling we're doing something wrong here. Yep, the spelling is wrong. So the first letter needs to be caps, and boom. If you hover over chain ID, you can see it's displaying the chain ID of the Avalanche Fuji network, which means it's perfect. So you need to pass in the chain ID to the function returned by the useSwitchChain hook, and it can, and as soon as you call this function with the chain ID, it's going to programmatically switch the chain. So let's save this file and go back to our application. We have an error that says network is not defined. Okay, it's because we have this going on here. Let's remove that. Oops. Cool. So now that we are here, we see an ugly button that displays over here. It says click me to switch to Avalanche Fuji. Now we are already on AVAX, so let's go ahead and switch to a different chain. Just for the sake of this example, I'm switching to Ethereum mainnet. Now when I click on this button, this should automatically switch me to the Avalanche Fuji network. Let's go ahead and click on that, and boom, you see a MetaMask kind of a pop-up that questions you whether you want to allow this site to switch the network from Ethereum mainnet to Avalanche Fuji testnet. It's the same testnet that we specified, is the chain ID that we specified, and it automatically prompts the user to change their current network to the chain that you have specified. And you click on switch chain, and boom, you have now switched to AVAX. Now notice that if you click this while you're already on AVAX, it does nothing, because obviously you're already on the right chain, so it won't ask you to switch chain. Now we have covered all the chains that, all the hooks that are specifically made for network connection. Let's do a small exercise and implement a very small feature here, just to make sure that you have fully understood what's going on. What we are going to do is we are going to import the hook that we recently went through, the useNetworkMismatch hook, and let's initialize a const with network mismatch equals use network mismatch. Initialize this hook. As you remember well, this returns a Boolean value. So if there's a mismatch, then it returns true, but if there isn't, then it returns false. And switch chain hook, as we just discussed, is used for switching the chain, but if it's the same chain, obviously it won't switch the chain. Let's implement a feature that automatically switches the chain. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's write here use effect and let's say okay, first we need to paste all these hooks that we have imported on the very top so that we can use them inside of our use effect hook. Let's add, so what we want to do is that whenever user switches to a chain that is not equal to the Avalanche Fuji testnet, we want them to be like prompted immediately with a prompt to switch to the right chain, or the Avalanche Fuji testnet chain in this case. So let's go ahead and import a new hook. It's not a new one, we already covered that. Let's import the useChain hook, and let's go ahead and initialize this as well. So const chain equals useChain, open and close parentheses. So this will give us the current chain that the user is connected to, and let's pass this chain value inside of our use effect. Now if you don't know what a use effect hook does, basically what it does is that whenever any value that's passed to this array to use effect hook changes, so for example in this case, if the chain is changed, like when user connects to a different chain each time, then this function gets called. Or whenever user changes to a new chain, then the use effect hook executes this particular function that we are about to write over here. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that if chain is not undefined, so let's say if not chain, and chain is not equal to, in this case we want to only allow make automatic switching in the case user is not on the Avalanche Fuji testnet. So we are going to say if the chain that the user is connected to currently is not Avalanche Fuji, or we can do chainId is not equal to Avalanche Fuji dot chainId. In that case, switch the chain to which chain? Yeah, we want to switch to the Avalanche Fuji chain if the user is not connected to it. So let's write here Avalanche Fuji dot chainId. One thing that you need to remember at all times is that the switch chain hook takes the chain ID as an argument, which is a number. So whichever number you specify, that specific chain is going to be prompted for switching. Now we did add this logic, but instead of writing so much code, all we really need to do here is do network mismatch. So if chain is not undefined, which means that the wallet is connected, and there's a network mismatch, which means that the chain that the user is connected to, it's not Avalanche Fuji testnet, then we are going to switch the chain for the user. So let's go ahead and save this file, go to our application, let's refresh the page, and boom. Now let me remove this button as well, just so that it's a little less confusing. Oops. And save this file, go back to our application, and let's go ahead and click this connect wallet button. As you can see, we are currently on the AVAX chain. Click on that. Let's switch to Ethereum mainnet, and let's see if our solution works or not. It prompts me to switch to the Ethereum chain. I'm gonna click on confirm, and as soon as I switched to the Ethereum chain, you can see there's a new pop-up that says allow this site to switch network from Ethereum mainnet to Avalanche Fuji testnet, which means our solution works. It knows that the user has switched to a different chain, and in that case it has executed our specified function using the network, using the useChain hook, and it's now asking us to switch back to Avalanche Fuji. And if I'm disconnected, wallet, it won't obviously prompt me because we specified here that the chain ID should not be undefined. And this is pretty much it when it, like for network hooks, and these were very easy to go through because they're very straightforward, unlike the wallet hooks, because when it comes to wallet, things get a lot more complicated. And I hope that this video was very informative for you guys, or you guys found it useful. In that case, please do like and subscribe and leave your feedback in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks a lot for watching.